listening to the Mark Bradford Alchemy for Life podcast.
My delightful conversation with Archy Jay, the Snake Charmer. So I am here with Archy Jay. She is the Snake Charmer.
Hello.
And that's all I'm going to say because there's so much to talk about with you. So, hey, hi there. Good morning / good evening to you.
Hi, yeah, it's good evening for me and good morning to you. Guys, I'm not really a snake charmer. I don't charm snakes. So, just an add-on, I play the bagpipes. I play a bagpipe called, mostly I play the electronic version of the bagpipes. It's a semi-electronic bagpipe. And I have a YouTube channel that's called the Snake Charmer.
Absolutely. You have done some absolutely amazing music. And I wanted to talk to you. Yes. Well, 11 million views on one of your videos can't be wrong. So that's really amazing stuff. So I normally ask people what they do and who they are. And I think you've kind of answered the what you do. So tell us a little bit about you.
Well, about me, I think I mean, it's been a very long time since someone asked me that question, tell us something about you. Probably I need to go on a few more dates to answer that question. No, well, just kidding about that. But, I'm actually, personality-wise, I find myself to be a very straight-up, headstrong person. And what drives me a lot in life is to do something different, is to stand out. Actually, that's just the way I've always been, always been into doing something that not everybody is doing, into something that not everybody is into, etc. And I think that is how I figured and found bagpipes to be part of my life. And yeah, that's essentially who I am. I'm a very fun and outgoing person. I love to laugh, make people laugh, usually the loudest in a group and all that. So yeah, that's kind of somebody that I am.
So you are very much the person that we see in the videos and hear in the music.
Oh yeah. I mean, of course, usually I don't like to fabricate or probably, smoothen a lot of lines out from what I show to my audience and who I am in real life. I mean, whether you see my social media, I'm very opinionated. I speak my mind. I don't fear a lot of things at the moment, maybe because I'm not like a huge star that needs to worry about a lot of political shit. But yeah, I like to speak my mind. I like to give a version of myself to people just the way I am.
Well, I think it's really taxing to not do that. I mean, I think if you have
Not do what?
multiple it's very taxing if you were to have persona A and persona B and persona C and say, well, this is my stage persona, this is my real life persona and so forth. I think sometimes that can be really taxing.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think every artist does that on some level. I think I do it too. I mean, I'd love to say that I'm like how do I say it? I mean, what I mean to say is every artist has some sort of a boundary or some space, a part of their life that they don't like to show as it is. Right. And I completely understand that. In fact, that's how we all are. Whether you're
right.
a somebody or whether you're not a somebody, what you show on your social media is, if not way different than who you are in your real life, but at least somewhat different. So I'm not way different in my real life. I am obviously somewhat different. We all usually like to show the best of ourselves on social media, and that's just how it goes.
Oh, absolutely. And I think obviously there's a more intimate side to us. There's a personal side to us, and we can't show our intimate personal side when we're at the dentist's office or whatever. Obviously there's our public side, and especially if you're a performer, there's a public persona that sort of comes out whether you want it to or not, and people start to migrate to that, and they say, "Ooh, I like that person," and then you get motivated to continue to be that person. And
exactly. And then I'm sorry, but what I wanted
please.
to add to this is that there's like a thin line. So let's say if I do a show, somebody walks up to me and says, "Oh wow, this was great, we love you," and whatever not. I don't think I get any different side of my personality activated to answer that person back. I mean,
Hmm.
I'd answer them back just, I mean, in my own self, and I'd be full of gratitude, say thank you, be very nice to them, and that's just how I am. So even if
Hmm.
there was no camera pointed at to me, you'll see me off guard. If you catch me off guard, that's how mostly I'd come across, unless like I'm at the day 2 of my period really cramping hard. Then you get a different personality. Let me warn you that don't come near me at that time. That's the only time you get the worst of me.
Well,
But
then you can wear a special hat, and then everyone will know.
yeah, I think I need like a T-shirt printed for that. That's actually a good idea. So that's the only time that you'd be surprised by who the hell is that. But then
Yeah,
usually it's that side of me. So that's what I mean to say that a lot of times it's very effortless in interacting with people or speaking with them, just because you're comfortable in who you are
perfect.
and you're being true and projecting yourself the way you are. If not like 100%, even if you're projecting yourself 80% of who you are the way you are, I think it's pretty easy going.
Absolutely. And that gets back to the effort comment I made, that if you're being you, you're not having to add extra effort to be someone else. And that gets to, something Shakespeare said, which is to thine own self be true. And I think that's so huge, because when you are that way, just
Yeah,
life is a little bit easier,
yeah.
just like making up lots of falsehoods and lying and stuff like that. It's just too much work. I think that's the reason I'm such an honest person, is maybe because I'm lazy. I don't
No,
want to have
it's
to track all that stuff down.
it's yeah, that's right. It's good. Being on, if you're lazy, you don't have to do a lot of efforts in hiding whatever different shades there are to you. Just be honest, and that's all right. That'll just take off on its own.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome. And I think what you mentioned dating, that you'd have to go on some more dates to figure out who you are, because you don't get asked that question. It's funny because it's an interesting question to say, tell us who you are, right? Because suddenly
Yeah.
you stop and you have to look in the mirror and go, wait, well, who am I? Because
No, it's like
if
having
you're
like a spotlight right onto your head and so like, tell us who you
right,
are. I was like,
yeah,
do I not know who I am? It's like, almost that way.
right. You didn't realize there'd be therapy involved in this session, right? And that you'd have to answer lots of questions. No, I'm kidding. So I wanted to get back to your music, and something you said is that it is a very energetic music, and it's really fun. And the
Hmm.
the song that actually I stumbled on with you was the Avengers cover that you did, and
Oh,
I just thought it
okay.
was so neat. Right? I know, right?
Thank
That's like
you.
right out of left field from some of the other traditional stuff you've done.
Yeah, I mean,
And
usually people catch me on the most popular videos of mine, so that's why I was like, oh, okay.
right, I'm someone who likes the more esoteric stuff. I like the interesting, the crossing of lines, which obviously you're already crossing a number of lines. You're sort of blending a whole bunch of fun things together to make who you are. And so, well, maybe that's who
Thank
you are.
you.
You're someone who blends a lot of stuff together. There you go. Uh,
Yeah, like
but
music wise, yes.
Well, right, and I so the Avengers cover I thought was just awesome. It was very motivating, very fun, and I've tweeted it a bunch of times and told people how it's just something fun to listen to if you're down. It's very motivating. In fact,
Hey, thank
it's
you.
it's it's a good thing to work out to, actually, something like that. It's just because it's so different. And then
Wow. I should try that.
yeah, right. Well, that's pretty cool for you to be able to produce music to motivate yourself.
Exactly. I think that's what
I
I
know.
should get behind now.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. So you also and you also, even though you're quiet on most of your stuff, and by quiet I mean you're not singing, you also have a singing voice,
Yes, I do. In
and it's
fact,
and it's not
actually,
not a bad one.
oh, thank
It's
you.
a
Because
yeah.
I was actually trained to sing in my life. I mean, that was the first interaction music wise that I had than bagpipes ever. Bagpipes is something which is very new in my life, which is why I'm not like still excellent at it. That's how I judge myself. Bagpipes started in 2015 for me, but then I started singing at the age of 6 or 7, and my mom got me into music because
Wow.
she used to sing really well. And yeah, so I started singing whatever she taught me, and then when I was a teenager, I dumped all the shit that she taught me. And I started following my own, started following all different sort of things. Then got introduced to rock. Really loved that. Got into heavy metal. Really loved that too. And my first ever professional band kind of thing that I had was actually an alternative metal band, to which I was the front woman, and I was the lead vocalist for that, which went on for about 2.5 years, I guess. And my band was called Rogue Saints. So we did pretty cool stuff there, and we performed at a few places here in Delhi, India. Nothing very big, and we wrote like a couple of 3 songs or something, and then it met the fate that almost every band meets, which is that it disbanded. And which is when I thought, oh my God, it's so frustrating to find people who have the same fire that you have in life, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
etc. And in that fit of whatever emotions, I was like, I don't want to have a band again and have to deal with all of this. I mean, I just at that moment I thought that whenever I do whatever I do again to restart the whole thing, I'd probably do it as a solo project, so that I'm solely in charge of how far I go and whatever I put out. And it's not depending on other people's shoulders to push what I have in mind forward. And around that is when I came across this band called LYT, which is a folk metal band, very popular. They're from Switzerland. And I saw this guy playing the bagpipes in that video. And I was like, oh my God, that is so awesome. And I was like, shit, I want to do this. And believe me, I've never professionally played any instrument. So this is just as
Wow.
good as someone who's a vocalist for their entire life look at some video and
Wow.
go, oh my God, I want to play an instrument. And I'm like, what? Because I've been gifted a guitar twice in my life, all right? And I've never come around liking it as much or being able to play it. I mean, no offense to guitar players around the world, you guys rock, and
Literally.
hats off to living through all those finger dents in those initial days. But then I somehow didn't resonate with me. And then so that didn't happen. And we have so many teachers here, even in India, to teach you the guitar or keyboards or whatever it is. And then the instrument that I actually fell in love with was the bagpipes. Rarely have
Wow.
people heard about it, let alone see it, and let alone even play it at this part of the world. I mean, obviously there are people who play the bagpipes here in India too, traditionally, but then it's not at all one of the mainstream instruments or even something that people have heard of. In fact, there's a whiskey brand here in India called the Bagpipers, and
Of course.
people know the whiskey way more than they even know that this instrument exists in real life. So that's kind of how this whole thing started.
Well, that's a very different story than people would expect. People would say, "Oh yeah, your Scottish father taught you to play the bagpipes at 11 years old or something, right? And you
Yeah,
resisted, and you finally got good at it." That
yeah, my
it's
Scottish father who belonged to India.
right. So it's pretty crazy that you hadn't played an instrument but just sang.
Yeah.
And when you say you threw all that out, it's very interesting because I think as our minds adapt to information and skills, we then want that next level. So it's almost like
Yes.
you had a foundation that thought, okay, I get this, but now I have to do it my way.
Yes, and honestly, when I think back now, I don't know what I was thinking, like taking that important, like that big a decision, because I think it was great that I didn't think it through too much. I think that's where we lose half the passion in our lives, is when we start
Exactly.
thinking so much so that we just leave ourselves with, oh my God, I don't think this is gonna work.
Mm.
And I think that's exactly what didn't happen with me. I just went with impulses. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. What next? I want to find how to do this. And then I started finding out how to do this. And then one thing led to another. And before I knew, I was asking my brother who lives in Canada to buy a practice chanter with me, which is, by the way, like a mini version of bagpipes. And that's something you start on before you pick up the bagpipes.
Oh.
And, like I said, from childhood, I've always been a person who loves to do something different. And it's not something that I try. It's just like, that's just the way I get attracted to things, which is not so common. And I think that's what happened when I saw the bagpipes, that even though I had like 2 guitars at my disposal to start and teachers and stuff like that, but the bagpipes was just something that spoke to me. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And honestly, I was even taking professional bel canto singing training, which is like the opera style singing, etc., from a Russian lady here in India. And
wow.
I was in the middle of that and, thinking of taking my singing career seriously and stuff like that. And at that point, it's actually very insane to think, you know what, I'm just going to not sing now and try to play an instrument. And thank God I didn't say it to myself that way, because then I would have never done it. I just never said all those things to myself. I never thought that, hey, I'm just going to put my singing to the backseat. I just thought that I'm going to start something, different. And
right.
That's how I just started off.
Oh, yeah, you changed your focus, but you didn't give up on the other thing, and you
But
embraced.
I eventually kind of did, but I didn't ever tell myself that, hey, I'm gonna give up on the singing. So I never told myself that. If I probably said that to myself at that point, I would be a little scared. Yeah.
Right, and you didn't tell yourself that singing was bad and this other thing was good. You just said, that's fine. I'm going to go explore this other thing now. So that way there's no guilt involved in saying, oh, I abandoned my singing, because you didn't abandon it. And you just thought, well, there's this other thing I want to focus on.
Yeah, precisely. I found something more new and exciting and something that I wanted to explore at that time. Sure.
Well, and I think that exploratory side of us is what is super rewarding. I mean, it can be epically failing, but it's also that thing that really gives us the biggest reward of going, this is kind of cool. I want to try this. And you could say, oh, okay, well, I sucked at that. I'm not going to do that anymore. But you could also find, as you did, that, wow, I guess I don't suck at this at all. In fact, I'm really good at this.
Exactly. It's just like, that's what we live for. We live to explore.
Right.
There's no point in just being scared about everything your whole life. Sometimes it just takes that one voice from within to just say that, hey, you know what, do this. That's it. No if, no looking back, nothing. And I think when you're at this point of your life, and if you're at a point of your life when you don't have a whole bunch of responsibilities, and I think my voice is mostly to people who are not married or who are really young, etc., who fear taking risks, I think you guys should just forget the hell out of being scared. I think you guys are at the biggest, we all are at the biggest advantage point of taking a risk, because you don't have like loans to pay, you don't have a family or child to support and things like that. And that's the best time to take a risk. I mean, hats off to people who are in those situations and still take a risk. But what I'm pointing at is, when you're at this stage, it's easier to do something like that.
Right. And that's well said. And the thing is, when you're inside that bubble of where it's easier, you don't realize it sometimes, which is why it's good that you told them that, because sometimes when you get to the point where your full-time job, kids, house, all that other stuff, and everything else is sort of on hold because now you shouldn't be taking risks, it's past that time and you realize, wow, that was when I just should have gone and did all that stuff. And back to your point of you're wondering whether you're good at it or not. I had a podcast about a month or so ago called "Does This Suck?" And the point of the podcast was, a lot of people who are creative and typically create things take a step back very often, far more often than people realize, and go, "Is this good or not? Is this good or not?" And because obviously, the way that you produce high quality stuff is because you're constantly looking at it and testing it, and you have high standards. But sometimes those high standards can get the best of you, and you can think something isn't great when everyone thinks it's fantastic. And it's that whole paralysis by analysis where you don't move forward with something because you don't know if it's good enough. And people who write, and perhaps maybe people who write songs as well, people who write tend to write and their book never sees the light of day because it's just never good enough, and those people never get published because of that.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. And I mean, I think a part of that happens to us too, especially my music producer, Karan, who is also the producer and the guitarist for another band called Bloodywood. We work together on my music, on like the Snake Charmer's music too. And I've seen him go crazy over this, like making something and then saying, like, next morning he'll be like, shit, this sucks. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. And that's something that happens to a lot of musicians. You're right about that.
Absolutely. Speaking of the producer slash guitarist slash I remember reading that you actually one of your songs you produced basically with just 4 people, and you edited yourself one of your videos. So you
yeah, like I've done that to like a few songs of mine.
Yeah, and that's impressive. And it's impressive that there isn't this entourage of 70 people and you're done performing and you go home for the day, that you actually are so involved in that, and that you're also doing editing and things like that.
Well, I think that's one of the main points that I'd like to highlight in your podcast is that I think today every creator needs to be master of all, what do you call that? Like a jack of all trades kind of a thing.
Yes.
No, I mean, I was using the wrong phrase, but yeah, like a jack of all trades. And I say that why? Because when I first thought that I want to make a video, I'm just going to tell you a short story.
Please.
So this was during my song Thunderstruck. Dubstruck is what the name of
Yes.
the video is, which is something that got a lot of attention. And I think that was one of my first early, most popular videos.
Probably because it's awesome.
Thank you. So what happened was that I had no idea of editing. I just knew basic in and out cuts, and that's about it. Okay. I don't know a whole bunch even now, but then I do know enough to get my way around. But yeah, so when I created that video, a good friend of mine promised me that, hey, you know what, I'm going to edit this video for you. And I was like, oh, wow, thank you so much. And I was really grateful. And then I used to go to his place every day, and, we'd sit editing. And I think it was about 3-4 days passed. And one day he just called me and said, oh, and I offered him money because at that time I didn't really have much. But he said, no, it's all right. I'm going to do this just for you. It's all right. We'll just do it as a friend and things like that. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. And then one day I called him and said that, hey, when do I come next? And, we still have to finish the video. And I announced publicly on my social media that on this date the video is going to release and things like that. And I think it was just like 3-4 more days of editing I think was required to get this thing done. In fact, we hadn't gotten a lot further in the video. I don't know why it was being done so slow, but then yeah. So then this guy says that, oh, I'm sorry, I just got this project and this company gave me this project. Basically, it was a paid project. So he thought it was more convenient to ditch whatever he was doing with me and then get on that. And understandable. But then here's where I found out that I was not at the right position, because I couldn't demand that out of him. Neither was I paying him, nor did I know how to do my own work. So that's when I realized that, if only I didn't have to depend on this guy to get my editing done, I would be able to get on it now. And that's what we did. So me and Karan, who was just basically to be my music producer doing that, on that song, he helped me out too. He was like, you know what, fuck this. We're just going to do it our way, and we're just going to do it on our own. I was like, how are we going to do that? We don't know how to edit. It was like, everybody learns things off the internet, didn't you? I was like, yes, I did. And he was like, yes, so we're gonna learn this on our own too. And that's how it started. So both of us sat down and saw like 2.5 hours of Adobe Premiere Pro videos, tutorials, and half of the video was edited by him and half the video was edited by me. And I think we did a decent job. And I was like, yes, we did it. So I was almost in tears when I had that phone call with my friend who just decided to dish me halfway. I think that was my biggest lesson into learning how powerful it is to have control of your own work.
Yes.
And that's when I realized that an artist in today's date should not just be a master of his music or her music. I mean, that's important. But then you need to know how the camera works. You need to know how to edit your music. You need to have some basic knowledge about how the lights work in front of the camera.
Right.
Everything. The more you know, the more empowered you are, and the less you will be disappointed in people. And that's the lesson I've learned. And so
Yes.
Dubstruck, when we launched it, it was a hit. Like it went viral. It was covered in so many major online music magazines across UK, US, and it was great. It was great for my channel. It was great for me, and it definitely lifted my spirits, and I had me really confident in what I was doing.
Okay. That's a happy end to that possibly terrible story. That's
it,
wonderful.
it was going to be a very terrible story, and the same thing happened with the same video. We got ditched twice. So someone was supposed to do the editing, and another person was supposed to do the color correction, and both of
Mm.
them ditched me. Both of them.
Oh.
So after I edited the video, I started calling the color correction guy, and he also like, oh, I'm doing this right now, I can't do this. And I got so pissed. I was like, what the hell is happening? So then we learned color correcting, and then we did color correcting too, along with the editing. So
Perfect.
that's how.
There's a lot that you just said, and so you proved to me the reason that I was attracted to wanting to talk to you. And time and time again, I find people that I think are dual brained the most interesting. And when I say dual brained, it's somebody who has a creative side, and they also have the logistical side at the same time.
Yeah.
And you clearly have that. And I think as a solopreneur, I guess I could call you an entrepreneur that's doing it all. You kind of need to have that, because you kind of need to, you can't hide behind the creativity and go, well, I don't know business, I don't know. And you can't be a business person only because then you're not producing anything. So you're somebody who produces content and creates, but also has to have her mind around, well, how does this all work?
Most definitely.
So you don't,
I mean,
right?
Before any video, I have to get my mind around what I'm gonna wear, how am I gonna look, scouting locations and things like that. Like, everything. I don't have a whole bunch of team. In fact, at this point, I am working like me and Karan, handling the music. Everything else I have to handle on my own. We are thinking of hiring someone for the editing. But then, we'll see how that goes. But I worked recently with a brand, and it was Samsung. And I think you must have seen some promos of it a few months back. And they did like a couple of minutes promo with me. And like for a very small ad shoot, they had about, I don't know, like 30 people on the set. And throughout, my jaw was like open. I was like, why do you have so many people on the set? And there's one guy bringing tea, the other guy is holding a pole, the other guy is holding the light, someone is turning the lights knobs. And I was like, what? We do all of these things amongst like 3-4 people. And then I told him about Nageena, which is one of my most popular videos. In fact, right now it crossed 5.2 million views, which is a great deal for an unsigned solo release.
Yes,
So
and that's original. That's your original song.
It's my original song, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and anybody who goes and sees that video on YouTube, we shot that in a freaking palace, and we shot that in the middle of a desert, and we had a total crew of just 4 people, and that included me. So, when I tell people that Nageena was shot with a crew of about 4 people, everybody gets so surprised, because that's how the human brain works. We think of something big, and we instantly think to ourselves, oh, we can't do this. We need so many people. We need that. We need this. And we instantly discourage ourselves so much that instead of seeing the possibility and the way to do it, we just give ourselves all the reasons of how we won't be able to do it, and which is the biggest reason that a lot of people to get discouraged into doing something big. And like, just go watch Nageena, and I hope that someone finds it inspiring to know that it was done by a very small crew, and you can do it.
That's really cool that people can that I just realized that at, like, on more than one level, people will be motivated by your music, but also inspired by the behind the scenes stuff to realize what went into it. And you touched on something that was a big awakening for me, is that and I said a phrase a while ago. I said life is far more interesting and complicated in my head. Because I look at something and I go, wow, I could never do that, or gee, that must involve X, Y, and Z. And then you do it. And I remember when I started cooking and I made my first ham, and I was like, wait, you're just warming it up? That's it? That's all you're doing is warm? And I always thought there was some magical process involved. And so, one by one, as you go through life, you start to learn there are a lot of things that if you just try that, you can kind of pull the curtain back and go, oh, it's not that hard.
Yeah, and a lot of people would think, oh, I'm sorry. What I'm saying is that a lot of people would think that it's easier said being done, which is true. Of course it is true. But then it can be done. That's the thing. Even today, even I find myself in a lot of situations where I think of the complications before I find a way to do it, And every time that happens, a lot of times I give into that complication and thoughts. But a lot of times I also think of the ways I can do it. And I compare it to the times that I felt the same way, but then I still was able to execute things. So, in fact, for anyone listening, I think it's just a great way to show yourself that you can do something, so that the next time you are faced with such complications, you can always think back that, hey, I am the same person who was able to do that XYZ thing I thought was really difficult to do. And then you might find some strength and energy from that example. So I think it's most important to be inspired from your own self. It's very easy to get inspired by some other person, but it's actually way more empowering to be inspired by your own self. So, instead of thinking what other people do something and set an example for yourself. I think I can be a saint now. Ha! I'm just kidding. Sometimes I just start saying things. Yeah, sometimes I just start saying things and I'm like, where am I getting all these words from? They kind of are true, and I never thought about it before.
They are true. Well, it's called, okay, so I say that pain equals experience and experience equals wisdom. You learn this by getting it wrong. You learn this by figuring out, you learn this by having the guy bail on you. You learned all that stuff and you realize, wait a second, I did that, now I can do that. And you took the words right out from me, because it doesn't even have to be in the same genre. Or, you can just realize that you learned how to fix something in your car, which gave you the confidence to go out and write a speech. It's like, well, wait, I did that, and that's something I was afraid of. So you end up building this foundation of things where you say, well, no, I can do that. And that, I think that's where confidence truly comes from, is where you say, well, it can't be that bad. What's the worst that could happen? I did this. And I think you start to build those things. And just like you said, and you look back on them and you say, I'm empowered. And I think it's so nice to hear someone use that word correctly, because it's one of those many words now that are overused so much that they lost their meaning.
Yeah.
And so when you say
I never thought of this line that I just spoke of right now at your podcast. I've never thought to myself that, hey, I have to inspire myself and all of that shit. I never said it to myself or anyone. But sometimes that's what happens when you talk and when you go back and you look back at all the things that you've done. Something comes out of it which kind of makes sense. And as I was speaking, I thought, you know what? That's actually true. It's so easy to pick up inspiration from other people, and great if that helps you. But I think what truly can help you and empower you is to be an example of your own. Because, a lot of times what happens is, whenever I feel low, whenever I feel that, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Like my mom, like people around me, they come and tell me that, hey, you're the one who learned the bagpipes on your own. Think of that time. You had nobody then. I'm sure you can do this. So looking back at your own self and thinking that, hey, I do have the power to do it. I just need to bring that courage back again, is so much more helpful than to draw that inspiration from other people.
Right, because there's no filter. There's no filter between you and you, because you
Yeah.
know what you've experienced was real, as opposed to, well, that person did it, but they have a different life circumstance. So
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, because you'll always find reasons and explanations on why they could do it and why you are
yeah,
not in a position to do it yourself, which is why I
yeah.
said that it's so much more better to be that inspiration to your own self.
Well, I see about 12 million views on your new video called "Inspire Yourself," in which, like, the cover is you looking in the mirror and
Oh.
you see your younger self.
I think, yeah, I've only gotten better over the past 10 years. Yeah, the next 10 years I don't know how I'm going to look, but yeah, I'm right there.
Yeah, no, I see that. That's brilliant. I think that'd be so
Cool.
cool. So when I see that video, I'll say, yeah, all right, I was there when it was created in your brain. That's awesome. So I wanted to thank you for spending your very valuable time with me, and I wanted to let you know also that I will have links in the article that goes along with this to all of your music on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and the
Awesome.
big one, YouTube, so that everyone can check you out and see you. And I strongly suggest that people subscribe to you on those platforms, especially YouTube, so they can check out all your good stuff and give it likes and thumbs ups and shares and all that good stuff. And I want to remind people also that you're homegrown in that way, and that you do so
Mhm.
much of this stuff yourself. So patrons are really important. So it'd be
Yes.
really cool for people to stand behind you if they like your music.
Oh yeah, that's another thing, I'm completely self-funded by people who appreciate my music, my videos, all you guys who view my videos, who interact with it, and especially my patrons who actually spend a dollar or more to support my career in a periodic way. And I think that's awesome, because we have no sponsors almost on all my videos. And yeah, I mean, that's how I fund my own videos, is through all the Patreon and the YouTube revenue that we make. So
Awesome.
thank you
Well,
so much, Mark. I mean, it was such a fun conversation that I had with you. And I think you helped me look deep inside and enlighten myself. I think now it's
wow.
going to be a good time to get back on some work and, use all of that motivation that I just spoke about for myself.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm glad I was involved in some way, and you're welcome to come back anytime.
Awesome. We should do that again.
Let's do that. Sounds good. Thank you so much, and have an awesome night.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Hey, it's me again. Thanks for listening. Two things for you. If you like this, I'd really love that you rate it on iTunes or Spotify. Would love to have the stars that are appropriate, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And the other thing is, I do have a new book out, and I would love for you to take a peek at it. It's called The Sword and the Sunflower. It's on Amazon as a Kindle as well as a paperback. Thanks. Just a little blurb at the end here. Take care.